Welcome to the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. My name is Graham and I'm part of the education team. We're here on level 5 where we talk about human rights upstanders. What is a human rights upstander, you might be asking? And what are human rights? This is what we do here when we talk to students, is we talk about what are human rights. And that's a great question that we want to talk about first. Human rights are something that we all have. And when I think about human rights as a teacher, I think about the right to education. The idea that we all have and should have access to education and high quality education. Right now is an interesting time in our world where education has kind of been turned on its head. You're probably at home right now, your teacher might be emailing you or sending you video links of work to do. Your parents are helping you with your math and they don't know how to do it. So you're at home and education has changed. But education is still a right, and that's why it's important that we can still access and give access to education around the world, even in times like right now. This right is something that's protected in a document called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights has 30 different articles, and in those articles, it tells us the rights that we're all entitled to as humans. One of those articles we have displayed here in the museum. This is the first article of the Declaration, and it says this: all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. What I really like about this article is that it says all human beings. That's everyone on this planet. The next part that I really think is really important is it says that are born free and equal. That means that we should all be treated equally, and no matter where we are or our differences. And that's something that we're born with, that every person on this earth should be treated equally, regardless of their differences. This gallery that we're going to enter now is a gallery that talks about human rights upstanders. Human rights upstanders are people who recognize that sometimes that article isn't actually true for everyone. That they see that there's something that people are not being treated equal. I'm using this term upstanders though, and I haven't told you what it means. A human rights upstander is a person who, 1, recognizes an injustice, 2, knows their personal strengths, and 3, uses those strengths to create change. So you might be saying, well, that sounds great, Graham, but what is an injustice? And let me show you here. In the middle of our gallery, we have this exhibit. And this exhibit talks about, we call it the Everyday Objects Array. Around this array, we have a number of different objects. Up at the top, we have water. We have palm oil, plastic bags, makeup, bricks, corn, gold jewelry, shoes, and cell phones. And each of these objects are connected to human rights, and in particular connected to a human rights injustice in some way. I'm not going to have time to talk about how each of these objects is connected to a human rights injustice, but I challenge you to think about how are each of these objects connected to a human rights injustice? And what does it mean to be an upstander when you recognize one of these injustices? One of the things I want to first talk to you guys about, though, is a cell phone. And this is a really interesting example because not only is this connected to a human rights injustice, but it is also something that can be used for human rights. We see cell phones used all the time and social media platforms to document injustice, to encourage other people to take a stand for injustice, in calls to action using social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, even on TikTok. But the other thing about a cell phone is that it's not also, it's an injustice. And we see this in a place called the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is rich in an element called cobalt. Now, cobalt is key in making a battery inside of your phone and in devices. And much of that is mined in a different way than what we would typically think a mine is. It's in what we call an artisanal mine. An artisanal mine is something that is usually dug by hand. It doesn't have the same safety features and things like that that people would have in mines. And oftentimes the people who are working in those mines are children, or people who are dealing with poverty and have other struggles, and are having their rights violated in an effort to get the the cobalt that we need to get to be in our cell phones. So that's what one injustice is, and there's lots of injustices around the world when we look around. But it's important to recognize that the world isn't just full of injustices, that there's things we can do when we see those injustices. And one person that I want to talk to you about today that has recognized one of those injustices is Malala Yousafzai. You may have heard of her before. Malala, when she was a young girl, was told that she was not allowed to go to school because she was a girl. She felt that this was incredibly unjust, and she wanted to do something about it. She recognized that she was good at writing, and so she started to write, and she wrote a blog to draw attention to the injustice that was happening in her world, where girls were not allowed to go to school. This blog gained some pretty big readers, and as the word got out that girls were not being allowed to go to school and that Malala was speaking out against the government, one day on her way to school, she was shot. Now, fortunately for Malala, she was not killed, and she was rushed to a hospital and then flown to the United Kingdom, where she recovered from that being shot. And as she recovered, she decided that she wasn't going to stop there. She would continue to take a stand against injustice and take a stand for girls' education around the world. Eventually, she won the Nobel Peace Prize. She saw an injustice, and she recognized that she had the ability to write and to speak and to create some change by bringing attention to that injustice around the world. And that's what she's done. Now, not everybody's a great writer or a great speaker, and that's not how all Upstanders use their strengths to create change. I wanted to show you one more Upstander here. This guy here, his name is Vincenzo. Vincenzo is an Italian immigrant, so he knows what it's like to move from one country to another. Vincenzo is also a really great photographer, and so his strength would be photography. And as Vincenzo came through Canada, came to Canada, he started taking pictures, and he became a very well-known photographer. And he saw that there was an injustice happening here in Canada where there were migrant workers, and there were some injustices happening with them. And he said, I want to draw my attention, the attention to these migrant workers using my strengths, using my camera, something that I'm good at, and something that I can connect to. And he used his camera to draw attention to this and just create some change by using his own strengths. And that's really what it means to be an Upstander. To be an Upstander means to recognize an injustice, to slow down and think, what is it that I see in my world that is an injustice? To know your personal strengths. What am I good at? How can I use my strengths and my passions to create some change? Now, creating change sounds really challenging sometimes, but I always say that creating change starts with tangible, small actions that make a difference for one person. You don't have to change the world. You don't have to win a Nobel Peace Prize. But if you can recognize injustice, use your strengths to create some change, you can be an Upstander. Just like I am an Upstander, and those around you are Upstanders. So that's my challenge to you today. Think about what the injustice in your world is, and how are you going to use your strengths to be an Upstander. If you want to learn more about what it means to be an Upstander, you can check out our website, humanrights.ca/Upstander. There it gives you a number of different stories of human rights Upstanders, people who have used different strengths to create change in their world. So I challenge you to check that out today and become an Upstander.